Hello and welcome back to the 100 Jobs Project. I'm your host, Katie, and I am here today with Mollie Emlack, who is the Vice President of Sales for Emlack Moving. Am I saying that correctly?
Yes, you
Okay,
are. I'm very used to people either misspelling it or not saying it correctly, so it's totally fine.
I'm so excited to chat with you today for a few reasons. First of all, your company is a family business and you're now in the fourth generation of ownership. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
that's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Fourth generation of ownership of this family business and also the moving industry, I always think of as like a very male dominated field. So really excited to get your insight on your
Yeah.
career just for a few reasons.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Of course. So you're in Texas, you've got a couple dogs, and then you're headed into work every day.
Yes, yeah.
What a great life. I wish you lots of pools this summer since it will be hot and muggy.
Yeah, and there's no way to survive in Texas in the summer either without being indoors in the AC or being out in a pool. Those
Oh
are
my
really
gosh. I don't
options.
know what people did before air conditioning.
I don't want to think about it, actually. I don't want to know.
I know. I feel like being like in the DC area, we're close to a lot of like the colonial stuff. And anytime we go do like a colonial tour where they have reenactments of people in all of their garb, I'm like,
Yeah.
how did you survive in the colonial times wearing all of these clothes in this hot, humid, muggy place? And then I think about places that are even further south.
Yeah, and I always whenever I hear people say, "I was definitely born in the wrong time period," I'm thinking, "I was not. I'm totally comfortable with modern conveniences and running showers and air conditioning and yeah, no, I
Totally
don't wanna go backward. No, thank you."
love my AC and indoor
Yes.
plumbing.
Yeah,
Like, and
exactly.
even just like being able to get all sorts of fruit and whatever you want whenever you want it. Like the
The
logistics
convenience is
of
wonderful.
yes, definitely, definitely. I'm sure we could talk about, living in a different time, living in humid places all day, but I would love to get to know you on a little bit of a different front too.
Yeah.
When you are going to work, do you tend to lean more towards heels or do you gravitate toward flatter footwear?
Oh, I'm a sneaker girl all day. I
Okay.
know that's maybe not super socially acceptable, definitely more so in the last 5 years, but yeah, I gravitate towards Vejas or, Adidas, something that's still elevated, but that's comfortable because I travel a decent amount for work too, so going
Hmm.
to airports or, walking through huge convention centers and things like that, the last thing I'm gonna do is wear a heel and get blisters. No, thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Do you feel like you have to wear, like, dress up a little bit? Are you more like business casual at work, or business formal, more casual most of the time?
Yeah, I think it depends on the situation. I
Hmm.
generally lean towards business casual, so usually jeans and a blazer or, a relatively nice dress, but nothing over the top. I'm a comfort girly all the way through.
That's definitely nice to be able to have some flexibility in dressing for your day. And there have been so many cute tennis shoes that have come out in the past few years.
Yeah, and so I'm happy to ride that train and that trend.
Absolutely. Now, when you're headed into work, are you usually bringing something that you've meal prepped for lunch, or are you a lunch out kind of gal?
So I usually don't spend a whole day in the office because I'm
Okay.
usually running around from appointment to appointment. So sometimes I'm on event lunches and things like that where I can eat there and sort of multitask. But I generally try to eat at home. I don't love to eat out because especially traveling for work, I eat 3 meals out a day every single time I'm out
Hmm.
of town. So when I am home, I prefer to eat at home.
There's a definite difference in having something that's cooked at home and prepped at home, even if you're eating at nicer restaurants or restaurants that are leaning towards something that's a little healthy. Like there's a difference between a restaurant salad and a salad that you made in your own
Yeah,
kitchen.
absolutely. And I'm really not a big cook. I don't love to cook, but I like eating my own food and knowing what went into it.
There's so many simple things that you can just throw together. I know I've been a big fan of cottage cheese and eggs on toast for breakfast.
Yeah.
Nothing like
Yeah.
fancy, but it's just like bing, bang, boom, you're
Yeah.
done.
Yeah, no, I'm a big soup maker. I have
Mm,
my grandma's old soup pots, and that's why I love winter and, spring because it's still cool enough to do that. And then in the summer, that's pretty much the one thing I will not make in the summer because eating hot soup in 95 to 105-degree weather is not fun at all.
No, definitely not. Soup
Mm-mm.
is so good too because I feel like it's one of those things that just reheats so well. I find myself getting sick of leftovers if I've like meal prepped something for 4 days. By day like 3 or 4, I'm like, this feels like wilted
Yeah,
gross. But soup I can absolutely
you
eat
can keep
for a full
going.
week.
And it freezes well, so you can eat it later. Yeah,
Yeah.
multi-purpose.
Now, if you have a 15-minute break in your workday, maybe we'll make it a 20-minute break. Would you tend to gravitate more toward going on a walk or taking a power nap?
Ooh, walk all the way. I
Mhm.
used to be a really big napper, back in, I'd say, high school on the weekends and in college. I used to do that a lot. Now, if I do, it throws everything off. I feel really groggy. I just don't really enjoy it. I would so much rather get out in the sunshine. Actually, I should preface that and say, unless it's summer. If it's summer
Mhm.
in Dallas, I don't want to go outside in the middle of the day. But if it is middle of the day, any other time, and I can walk the dogs and get them some fresh air too, I'd much rather do that.
Yeah, I definitely get that. I have no idea if this is valid or not, but I did see something on TikTok recently. Again, no idea about how valid it is, about how power naps are just not as good for women. And I've talked with my husband because he
Yeah.
loves power naps. I cannot stand them. I feel like it's just at that point where I'm like actually starting to fall asleep and then I have to like get up and do more stuff. But I don't know. He swears by them. I can't stand them.
Yeah, I haven't heard that, but I could see that being a case because, there's never enough research on women's subjects anyway or women's health comparatively. But yeah, I wouldn't doubt that. It also might just be by person. For some people, they work really, really well. Not so much for me.
More research needed. I will be going down the men versus women power nap rabbit hole. Now, one question that I love to ask everyone is what's in your work bag? What are you bringing or throwing in your work bag every day?
I mean, business cards are a must when you're in sales, so that's always in my bag. I usually have a snack of some kind, so sometimes they're Go Macro bars, sometimes they're the Bear fruit rolls, which my brother makes fun of me and says that his kids eat those, and then I'm eating child snacks, but they're really good. They're a nice burst of a little bit of sugar, of natural sugar, or something that I made like granola bars or something like
Hmm.
that. And then I generally keep a small bottle of hypochlorous spray, which is really good for people with sensitive skin if you don't know already.
No, amazing. I recently joined the hypochlorous spray
Yeah.
train, and it's
Yeah.
so refreshing just
It
in the middle
is.
of the day.
Yeah. It's a nice little pick me up when you're in the middle of office air and, you're under fluorescent lighting and you haven't had fresh air in a few hours. It's a nice little treat.
Perfect. I mean, it sounds like you've got a good thing going if you're able to
Yeah.
hopefully get out for a little walk, do a little spray,
Yeah.
and
And you're set.
get back to work. Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about your work and what you do. Now, you're part of a family business. Did you feel a lot of pressure when you were younger to go into the family business, or did you explore some other interests?
I personally did not feel any pressure. My parents were really, really good about supporting me in whatever endeavors that I went into. So they said the most important thing is that you love what you do. And so if moving and storage is not for you, then we encourage you to go do something else. And I actually did that. I got my master's in science in counseling. I thought that I was going to be a therapist, and that was the route that I was geared towards. And that ultimately did not go the way I had planned. And I ended up in the family business. That being said, I think my dad was very happy when I decided to come in, but it was
Sure.
never an expectation or, it was never forced upon me, which I always really appreciated it. I came to the company on my own volition.
That is really cool because I can see how once you're getting to the fourth generation, that might feel like there's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I mean, the good thing is that we have so many MLACs in the business that it doesn't feel like it's all resting on your shoulders. There's
Hmm.
literally a family around you to help carry the weight. But yeah, it felt good to join something that was bigger than yourself. All this history and legacy in it was really special for me.
So it sounds like this is on your dad's side. What is has his role with the business been, and then what was your mom's background?
So my dad has always worked in the business, at least, from his account. He started there when he was young, working on the trucks. For him, it was kind of a foregone conclusion that he was just going to end up in the family business, and that's exactly what he did. So he's been there for 50 years now or more, and has been there ever since. And his current role is CEO, so he's still actively involved in the business. He's still client facing. In fact, I just saw him this morning. He came into the office and said hello and was taking care of some things. My mom has worked since before she actually technically should have been able to by child labor laws, but
Hmm.
that's her story to tell. She snuck a job in there pre-16, and then she worked at a large airline as a ticket agent for several decades, and then she had my brother, and then she had me, and she decided to stay home with us and be a stay-at-home parent.
No, that's a really special decision to be able to do that
Yeah,
and take some time. It also
yeah.
sounds like she'd been working for a long time before then. And I hate to call being a stay-at-home parent like a break, but like,
No, it's not. I couldn't appreciate it until I was older, but
mhm,
there's so much to be said for what goes into a stay-at-home parent. I mean, you're the chauffeur, you're the dry or you cook, you're the tutor, you're the personal assistant. You're doing all of these things that are wrapped into also being a parent and taking care of all these side tasks and making sure the doctor's appointments are set and the dry cleaning gets picked up and that your kids are have healthy snacks after they get home from school. So, there's so many things that go into it. And again, I didn't appreciate it until I got older, but I know she made a lot of sacrifices and did a lot for our family. And my dad traveled a lot growing up too, so it
mhm.
was just us and my mom, so she was effectively playing, single parent while he was out of town, and
Yeah,
that's a lot to take on. There's a lot that goes into being a stay-at-home parent.
definitely. And it sounds like great parents who encouraged you to pursue your own interests and made sure that you knew that there was a space for you should you want to come back and expand your role with the family. Now,
Yeah.
when you were a teenager, did you, start working in the company?
So I had a few jobs outside of the family business,
Okay.
mostly like when I was in college and things like that. But when I turned 16, I started working for the family business. I was doing, secretary duties. So I would answer the phone, I'd file files away, back when we were still a paper office,
Mhm.
pre COVID. I would empty trash cans and things like that, just the basic things around the office, scan in paperwork, that kind of thing.
And it sounds like, that didn't really entice you to go into moving. It sounds like you started to pursue something
Yeah.
different when you got to college.
No, it was not super enticing. I don't think at the time I got the full picture. And I think I was just too young to appreciate the full picture of what the moving industry was and where I could fit into it. And at the time, towards the end of high school, right around that same time frame, I had gone through some health scares. So I was very fortunate in the sense that I was able to access mental health resources and go to counseling. And it left such a big impression on me that I decided I wanted to go after that route and I wanted to pursue counseling and psychology. So I went and got my undergrad in psychology. And then I graduated with that. A few months after I had graduated, I told my parents I wanted to go back to school, and they were totally 100% for it. My parents have always been very pro education, and they've always said
Mhm.
that's something that can't be taken away from you. So they were very encouraging. And I went and got my master's from SMU, or Southern Methodist University here in Dallas, and did that route. So I thought that was the route I was gonna go, and I did not end up there.
So it sounds like you did your undergrad and then you did your master's pretty much back to back.
Yeah.
Okay, once you finished your master's, what did you start doing when you were done with school?
I graduated with my master's and, I loved everything I learned. I really enjoyed all the coursework and I've always enjoyed being a student. So I liked all of the homework and everything from classes, but I got all the way through and I ended up in the clinical portion. So, the internship, and you're actually sitting there counseling real clients and getting the real world experience. And I kept waiting for it to click. I kept waiting for it to feel right and to feel this deep sense of this is where I'm meant to be. And it never happened. And that was, I want to say, 8 months worth of time. And I just thought mental health is too important to not go into it being 100% present and sure. And I knew I wanted to finish my degree. So
Yeah.
I finished out the clinical work. I got the piece of paper and I had a conversation with my dad. We were driving down the highway and I told him how I was feeling. And I was really nervous that he was going to be upset. Like, well, you went after this degree and you're not actually going to pursue it. And actually, he was really supportive. Once again, I should have known he would have been, but he was really supportive. And he said, you have to love what you do because I love what I do. And there's never a day that it feels, tiresome and it feels like work. I enjoy this every day and I want you to enjoy it. But that being said, I think he kind of pounced on the opportunity because he said, come work for me for 1 year. Just give me 1 year. and sit with me. And I said, well, I did that. I worked in customer service support because I did that all through undergrad and then through grad school to kind of make side money, if you will. And he said, no, come sit with me in sales for a year. And that was 8 years ago now. So I think it was good timing. But yeah, I came into the business at that point and have been there since.
What a special thing to be able to have a conversation with your dad about this isn't feeling right, because that
Mm,
is a really scary thing to, well, for starters, admit to yourself and then vocalize out loud after you have been down this path where you've spent a lot of time, you've
mhm.
spent some good money,
Yeah.
and you've kind of like thrown your future in this bucket, and to say, this doesn't feel right. I don't totally know where to go. It's really cool to be able to have someone to confide in and to have them take that and help move you forward rather than making you feel bad about this
Yeah.
decision that you made, when in reality, we're all just kind of like floundering, trying to figure out what we want to do and what feels
Right.
right.
Yeah, and I'm very lucky that my parents were really supportive in that, whatever I wanted to do, especially in terms of education or career path, there was never any shame or judgment.
Yeah. I like the idea of coming to work for, your dad for the company for one
Mhm.
year too. Kind of putting a timestamp on that is cool. And you definitely do get a different experience when you are at a company for a full year, all the seasons,
Yeah.
rather than just a little bit here and there. Cause you can get way more into things, into the weeds, when you're there for a little longer.
Yeah, definitely, and it I think relieved me of some of that pressure of, "Hey, I don't need to be there for life," which I
Yeah.
probably will now, but at the time it was, "Okay, I can give a year, I can see what that's like." I just did almost 3 years of schooling. What's 1 year? And, I had never really been on the sales side of things, so that was a completely different animal that I ended up learning coming in at that point.
Yeah. Now, how did you feel about staying in Dallas? Was that something that you had thought you would do post grad school, or did you kind of
Yeah.
have to adjust to that idea?
So I think when I moved home from undergrad, I just kind of assumed, hey, I grew up in Dallas, and so I'll live there and see what's next. And I had an inkling that I wanted to go to grad school, but I got into SMU, which again is very close to home for me here in
Yeah.
Dallas, it's situated in Dallas. So I decided to just stay here and do my schooling here. And, I'm not opposed to leaving Dallas, especially now my husband's whole side is from here in Dallas, and my
Okay.
main family lives here, my brother and his kids and my parents and everything like that. So I think I'm here. I
Yeah.
hadn't really formulated a true plan to get out of Dodge at the time. So yeah, I ended up here and that's okay.
Yeah. Definitely sounds like you're rooted there, and hopefully you get a
Mhm.
vacation here or there in the summer to
You have
escape
to
the
in the
cooler
summer.
temps.
Yes, you have to, especially in August. My husband and I usually go up to Michigan to visit my parents there in the summer because it's a very long summer. I'll say that.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, what was that first year working for your dad like? It sounded like you had never done anything in sales before. Was that a totally new world and chapter? How did you adjust?
It was like drinking from a fire hose. I mean, it was a little bit of everything and anything. I started on the sales side in the private client part of our business, so people who were paying for their own moves is a very condensed way of explaining that. And so it was a lot of one-time sales or, referrals or things like that, and it was just navigating, how do I do this? How do I price it correctly? How do I sell our business? Because again, it's something I'd always been around, but how do I concretely put into words what our business is all about and the type of service that we deliver that will win business, that will earn us revenue. So not only was I learning more about the industry and our business from the sales side, but I was also just trying to figure out how to sell really. I had
Yeah.
that background, and this is why I'm so glad I had that experience in counseling and psychology, because part of it too is just trying to understand the psychology of each individual. Every sale was different, same formula if you will, but everybody was so different in terms of what they were looking for, what their needs were, those kinds of things. So trying to figure out both sides again was like drinking from the fire hose. It was chaotic.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is a good time to maybe pause. We've mentioned or alluded to, your company is a moving company, but can you give us a quick overview of what you do, what services you offer, what kind of people or businesses you help?
So I would say there's two main verticals. I don't want to break it out and take too long to explain, but really there's the residential household goods side of our business, and then there's the commercial non-residential, non-household goods side of our business. So one would be if you, Katie, are moving from DC to Miami or DC to Los Angeles or wherever, right?
Mhm.
You are moving your own personal effects within your home. Sometimes your employer would support that, where your employer would say, hey, we need to send Katie from one office to another. And so we're going to pay for her move. We're going to coordinate that benefit.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's you saying, I want to move closer to mom, or, I want to start in a new location. So I'm paying for it myself. That would be the residential part, the household good. And then in terms of the commercial side, that's everything from, an office move to store receiving and storing and delivering goods for a hotel project or a new K through 12 school or something like that. So there's a lot more that falls into those buckets, but that's kind of a bird's eye view of what we do in terms of moving and storage.
No, that is definitely helpful. Back on the residential side, it sounds like you're working with both individuals and then you're also maybe working with like companies or employers who
Yeah.
need their individuals to move.
Yeah.
So that is kind of bucketed in there. You're working with individuals and also some companies on individual moves. And then the commercial side is for some of those bigger, or not necessarily bigger, but just commercial projects.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good way of putting it.
Okay, no, that is really helpful background to know. And refresh my memory, how many people are in the company? How many people are like on the moving side versus in the office?
Yeah, so I would say we have about 70 employees. So that's people who sit in the office who are in accounting or customer service or operations. And then we have about 40 to 50 contract drivers that they're all, background checked and they're, through our company.
Are you split headquarters between Dallas and Michigan? Am I
Detroit,
making that
yeah.
up?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, good memory, good memory. Yeah, so I would say our HQ where we started was Detroit area, so
Okay.
that's where our first and main office was opened, and then we have our facility here in Dallas as well, and so out of all of our family members, about half are situated in the Detroit office, about half are in the Dallas office.
Okay. And
Yeah.
how did the company start? Looking 4 generations
Yeah,
back.
yeah.
What was the story?
So in 1924, my great grandfather, Charles, started the business. He decided to deliver ice back then before the days of refrigeration. Within a few years, realized that this was really not making enough money. He had a lot of mouths to feed. He had a really big family. I think it was 11 kids, maybe.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot of mouths. And so he and some of his family members decided to move household goods. So they would take the blankets off of their bed to wrap the pieces of furniture and deliver them from one end of town to the next, kind of doing more local work there. And then since, with every generation, we've just built things up. I think it was about 75 years ago or so, we joined Atlas Van Lines. So we were able to do what we call interstate work across state lines. So we can really operate all across the country. We do handle moves all across the country. That's sort of our bread and butter. We do international moves. We do commercial moves within, Dallas and within Michigan, the Detroit area. So yeah, we've really expanded and tried to diversify over the years as well.
Okay. Definitely a long way from
Ice
the early
trucks.
1900s. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Trucks to international moves is
Yeah.
huge. How cool to be part of something that has grown so much over the years.
Yeah, it is. It's very special. And there's so many people in our office that I've known since I was born or since I was a little girl. So it really takes family business, the meaning of that, to a whole nother level.
I can only imagine. Now, it sounds like you are sitting in the side of things where you are expanding things. You're working on sales, you're finding new customers, you're making sure that your current customers are happy and satisfied with the services that they're getting from you. So, what are you doing on the day to day? What does a workday look like for you?
Every day is different. Being in a family business where you're wearing a lot of different hats, no day is the same.
Hmm.
Sometimes you're working on a corporate move. Some days you're working on a private move. Some days you're going to tour an office facility. For me right now, I'm doing a lot of business development type work. So I'm out at
Okay.
meetings. I'm having a lot of coffee chats and breakfast meetings and happy hours and things like that, just trying to get more out in the marketplace and show people who we are.
So, meetings or happy hours or coffee chats with potential clients. No, that is That is cool. What would you say work looks like when you are in the office versus when you're on the road? You mentioned some trade shows. You mentioned, walking through different offices. What's kind of the purpose behind maybe doing some walkthroughs or those trade shows that you're going to?
Yeah, the travel is really about things like brand recognition, client visits, those kinds of things. So
Okay.
there are certain trade shows that we're at where we're out in front of clients or, we're representing the Atlas brand or the MLAC brand or something like that. But a lot of travel is things like conferences, conventions, and visits, that kind of thing. So it really
Okay.
takes me all across the United States. It just depends on where the meetings are.
Are the conferences and conventions like moving specific industry conventions or there's something different?
Typically, yeah. So I would say a good portion of them are more broader level, like
Okay.
if your global mobility or relocation or something like that, generally geared towards sort of all of that. But yeah, every once in a while, it's something that borders what we do, but isn't quite moving and storage. So a good example, if I can name it, is
Yeah.
Society of Human Resource Managers. So, it's something where a lot of HR managers need some sort of relocation benefit package or guidance or policy, or they need providers in their network to handle that work. So that's where, for example, we would sponsor or show or be a part of the exhibit hall.
That's helpful. I was gonna say, who's going to these conferences? And it sounds like HR
Yeah.
professionals would make a lot of sense. If you work in HR, you need to move people. You've got
Mhm.
to figure out how to do it and what some of the best practices are.
Yeah, exactly. And we're just one very small sliver within that big realm. I mean, you walk into the Sherm Hall and there's thousands of exhibitors and it's extremely overwhelming. But, it's good to be out there and just have people know what MLAC and what Atlas do as a whole and what services we provide.
Definitely. You mentioned too that you at least were at some point involved in pricing stuff. Is that part of your role now, like helping customers understand what a move might cost them?
Yeah, absolutely. So I worked on the private client side of our business for I think about 7 years or so. And yeah, so I was running estimates pretty much every single day, drafting up costs for people, and same with the commercial side. So actually going out on site, touring the facility or office, and putting together pricing. So yeah.
Okay, that sounds like a very complex job. I just imagine, a site visit and like scanning everything and having little checklists of, XYZ costs this much, that much. Is that kind of what you were doing?
Yeah, and it's interesting because this is one thing I think people maybe take for granted or don't know about the moving industry, but the way I view it anyway is that it's more of an art than a science. So because every single move is so different. I
Hmm.
mean, again, same formula, but you might have one that's coming out of downtown high rise, there's all these
Yeah.
logistical things that you have to work around versus, a 4-story townhome or, a big commercial warehouse, right? That you have to break down the racking and tear out data cabling and things like that. So everything is just so different. There's no one true model. And so it makes every estimate a little different.
And I can see how that would make every day very different too. No, that is cool to know and gives me insight into the moving industry that I would not have thought about before. So thank
Yeah.
you. How much of your time would you say is spent in Dallas at your home base versus on the road?
Well, so it's more seasonally, I would say.
Okay.
Spring and fall for me are really busy travel seasons because for anybody out there who doesn't know, the at least household residential side of moving is pretty seasonal in the fact that it's summer. So kids get out of
Hmm.
school, at least historically, COVID really put a monkey wrench in things in the housing market sense and interest rates and everything. But historically, summer has always been the busiest season for
Yeah.
household moving. So things are really geared around that as to not interfere with that. But that being said, I travel a lot in the spring and the summer. So I would say not gone every week by any means, but a few times a month for, a few days here and there in the spring and the fall is pretty common for me.
I can definitely see how that would make sense. Even just thinking about companies that do a lot of recruiting and are heavy on the relocation post recruiting side, I feel like a lot of those offers tend to come through in the spring with summer moves. So that makes sense on that front as well. Now, with a family business, are you ever off the clock or is like every family gathering work talk?
Well, so for me, that's two different questions. I would
Okay.
say, and I'll explain what I mean.
Yeah.
So, in terms of ever off the clock, I would say no. And I think that goes into knowing what you're getting into with a family business,
Hmm.
especially something that is as important as moving somebody's household goods, or commercial jobs where things are happening over the weekend. Knowing that at some point somebody needs an answer, right? Whether it's 10 o'clock at night or it's a Saturday or a Sunday or a holiday, there's going to be something that needs to get addressed and somebody has to answer that. So, yes, I've taken calls from my bedroom on a Saturday morning. I've answered calls late at night. I mean, luckily I don't bear the brunt of all of that because again, there's multiple MLACs in the business and there's other people who are on call after hours. But I would say I know what I signed up for kind of thing. And I watched my dad do a lot of after hours and weekend calls and things like that as well when just things had to be addressed. So that was something I always witnessed growing up and knew was a possibility. In terms of family time, I would say we're pretty good. We have fairly firm boundaries around when we're together. For example, yesterday we were all together for brunch and work never came up once. So there are times where we have those conversations where the boundaries might slip a little and we do have work style conversations, but luckily they don't last very long because I think we enjoy the fact that we're seeing each other outside of work and we can enjoy talking about things that are outside of work as well. We don't have to always be in work mode together.
It sounds like the way that your family has done things too by, encouraging kids to perhaps pursue other interests if they want to. There's family members who work in the business, and then there's probably family members who don't. And so I can imagine that having a mix of that too gives you a little more distance between regular life and shop talk.
And I think that was always important too. At least I can only speak for my immediate family, but for my
Hmm.
dad, there was always a lot of times when work does come up, but at the same time, it's family first and we are family first. We're not coworkers first. So
Yeah.
having that, maintaining a relationship outside of that, of knowing each other well on a personal level and enjoying each other's company on a personal level is always first and foremost. So I was
Yeah.
lucky to grow up with that distinction.
That's definitely really special. It sounds like you are often taking calls at weird times and perhaps working odd hours, but do you find that with that you have flexibility in your schedule to be off at other times?
Yeah, definitely. I think being in sales when you're going to a happy hour, let's just say, for example, and you're there until 7 o'clock at night and you don't get home till 7:30. Well, maybe I will take a couple hours off early one day to go accomplish other things because I
Yeah.
worked a little late. And there is that sense of freedom and flexibility because people trust that, if you're out and about in the marketplace and you're working kind of weird hours, you're not going to follow the traditional 8 to 5. And also with travel, when you're traveling for work and you might be taking a 5 a.m. flight and getting home at 10 o'clock at night, not every week looks the same. I'm still
Yeah.
answering emails at those times. Even if I'm on vacation, I typically try to at least check my emails a couple times a day just because I don't ever want to drop the ball.
That is definitely nice so that there is kind of this understanding within the company that if you're working odd hours, occasionally there's going to be times where during the quote unquote, using finger quotes here, work day, maybe you'll be off doing other stuff. I mean, you have to grocery shop at some point.
Yeah, exactly.
So if, you've had a really late night, maybe that is you're doing some of your errands and figuring that out in the morning.
Yeah, like last week I got home from a work trip and I didn't make it home until about 10:30 at night. So I said, yeah, I might have a little bit late of a start tomorrow. Yeah.
With that, I mean, do you have like a standard time that you're usually getting up and getting ready and coming into the office? Like, what do your mornings look like? Or are they really just totally different?
They're fairly all over the place. I would
Okay.
say if I'm in town, even when I'm out of town, really, but I really do try to abide by the 8 to 5 work model just because that's
Hmm.
what most of the other team members in our office are on. So I try to do 8 to 5 as much as possible, but knowing that sometimes I'm going to be on a 5 a.m. flight or, I'm going to have a early morning work meeting that starts at 7 or I'm going to a late happy hour. Every day is a little different. So
Okay.
typically the internal team, the ones who are more so situated at their desk, usually they understand, hey, if I don't get a response from Molly right away, she's probably at an appointment or at a meeting or something like that, and she'll get back to me.
Sure. Now, do you have any particularly memorable projects or moments in your role over the years?
It's interesting, especially on the household side, because I think I mentioned this earlier that people are very particular. There's so many different walks of life. And so what's important to one person might not matter to the other, and vice
Yeah.
versa. I would say when you start to get into the really high net worth, where you see some things and you think, how does that cost thousands of dollars? I never would have expected. Or, I have a customer who last year we moved almost, I think it was valued at $500,000 worth of a really high end book collection. So first
Wow.
editions and things. And we moved it from Texas to New York. And it was so particular. I mean, they wanted it down to taking photographs at the order that they were in and handling with white gloves and everything, which of course is a capability that we have. It's just not every day that you work with somebody who has a $500,000 book collection. Maintaining the order and, they're positioned just right and they're not too far back on the shelf. So just again, what some people would really care about, other people don't at all.
Yeah, definitely. I was going to say one man's trash is another man's treasure, but anytime, like a first edition book is probably never anyone's trash, hopefully.
No, hopefully not. Yeah.
That, or like, I'm sure you've seen like impressive wine collections that you needed to
Mhm.
move. And just, yeah, there's a lot of interesting things when you start thinking about it. There's a lot that would go into handling things with care.
Yes, absolutely, and even funnier too is when you have people who have really high-end wine collections and they never drink it. It
Yeah.
truly is almost like a collector's item, and
Yeah.
it's really fascinating though because you ask people who have these wine collections, "Oh, do you like wine? Do you ever crack these open?" No, they're just there to
Yep.
look nice and because I can. Okay, I'll
It,
move it for you, sure.
yeah.
Yeah,
Think if you'll pay me to move it,
exactly.
I will do
Okay.
it for you. So, with all of this, and especially all of the travel and just the variation in your schedule, is there anything that you feel like you really do to balance it all or to unwind?
I'm more of a homebody,
Hmm.
and anybody who knows me will laugh because of just how true that is. And I lean more introverted, so I think for me, having alone time and having peace and quiet is really important for me. I try to not overschedule myself or make commitments that I can't keep. I'm really strong on if I make a commitment, I'm going to be there and I'm going to do it. So trying not to overschedule myself, but I would say again, peace and quiet. And I like to read a lot. I think reading really helps me block out the rest of the world and really stay focused on one specific storyline or something like that, or something that I know is going to end. That's going to have a happy ending that I can count on reliably when there's so much else going on in the world, or I'm super stressed about something at work that I can zone out and compartmentalize and just enjoy a book, I think is important.
I can definitely see that. And that's something that I think does refocus your attention in like a longer way too, which is just a really good reset, at least for me personally, my brain that I feel like my attention is being pulled so many places so often that when you're able to sit and read something, it's a nice break in a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, given your experience, what do salary opportunities look like across the moving industry? I would imagine that in the corporate setting, roles would probably be similar to what they would be elsewhere. I mean, if you're in sales in the moving industry, it's going to be similar to other sales roles. If you're in marketing, it's going to be similar to other marketing roles. If you're in HR. Is that off base?
Well, so it's a little hard to say
Okay,
just because coming from my family company, I've never really worked outside of that piece of the business, right?
fair.
I've never worked in any other moving company or any other relocation centered company. That being said, from what I've seen and what I know, yeah, I mean, I would say most salaries are on par with other corporate style jobs.
Okay.
I can tell you now, drivers make quite good money, but
Yeah.
there's a couple things at hand with that. There's the fact that they're responsible for their own maintenance. They're on the road most of the year, away from their families and things like that. So it's very well earned and well deserved. It's just
Hmm.
comparatively to, say, an office job, you can make more. Now, the
Okay.
other piece of it is that there is a driver shortage in the United States. That's been something that's been going on for a long time. It's just, I guess, not as appealing to the younger crowd. So there's not as many people going down that path. We're hoping that that changes, but
Yeah.
just, yeah, that's been a reoccurring problem, not just within moving, but all of trucking over the
Yeah.
last several years.
What would you say like a range for drivers is?
I don't know off the top of my head, and I wouldn't wanna speak for them, but I can tell you the number looks quite high, but again, that's gross because they're
Okay.
paying for their own maintenance, they're paying for their own truck, there's a lot of other expenses that go into it, so they're not netting a ton of money. It's not doctor level salary
Okay.
knowledge, I mean,
Okay.
maybe, but
So
yeah.
it's likely not, half a million dollars, but maybe a little more than 80.
Correct, yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I would say it's more so than what you would make sitting at an office desk, but
Okay.
again, it's very well deserved, there's a lot that goes into that,
Yeah.
and you're effectively managing your own business and, making sure that your tires are good and your engine is good and handling the maintenance behind all of that.
Yeah. You said they own and manage their own trucks too. That seems like a big thing.
I mean, I wouldn't wanna do it myself, but yeah, there's a lot of intricacies that goes into and that's not really my specialty in
Okay.
terms of the driver side, the logistics piece. There's so much that goes into it, but yeah, I leave that part to the experts.
Okay. Is that pretty standard for the industry that moving drivers own their own trucks, or do
Yeah.
companies often?
That's
Okay.
yeah, that's pretty common, maybe not for all trucking industry or,
Sure.
the silos of the trucking industry, but yeah, I would say from what I understand, that is fairly common.
Okay, that's something that I would not have expected. I would have expected a moving company to, buy a fleet and depreciate them over the years. But I guess it does make sense when you're, hiring drivers as contractors that they would be in charge of some of their own equipment and hopefully have the specialty to take care of it.
I should try to find a trucker to connect you with so they can speak on that. They would be very knowledgeable.
I would love to talk to a trucker. I had an Uber driver maybe 2 months ago who drove trucks for Costco for a long time.
Oh,
It was late and I was by myself and I didn't want to really engage in a big conversation with this guy. But I was like, what an interesting job and life. And, to travel all over and just have the capability to drive big trucks.
yeah, and there's so much that goes into it, but just I don't envy them because you're away from your families, it's just a lot, and it's not for
Yeah.
everybody.
Sounds like it's a tough career to really manage relationships with. Now, if someone is considering a career in the moving industry or working in their family business, any advice?
Ugh, I would say just personally, the best piece of advice I would have would be to be a sponge and to be really curious, to always ask questions because this industry, for as old as it is, there's so many things that change on a day to day, and having the courage to ask questions, I feel like is so important. Not just in a family business, but just in general, and probably prioritizing relationships, prioritizing the fact that this is my cousin or this is somebody I've known for so long. They are a human being first rather than just an employee or a teammate. This is somebody that I know really well, maintain that relationship and have a good standing with them always.
Yeah, relationships make all the difference, especially
Absolutely.
as you get older and look back at your life. When you're thinking about your life as a whole, what does success look like for you?
I would say making a positive impact on the people around me. I mean, of course, for our clients, but for our team as well, of just being somebody that's reliable, being somebody that's dependable, knowing that, people can come to me and know that I'm going to help get the job done, I think would make me feel a sense of success and growing the company and seeing the revenue climb. I mean, of course, but yeah, on a personal level, making sure that those relationships are the most important piece.
I really like that. I think there's often a lot of pressure, or maybe just for me when I was young, I felt idealistic about, oh, I want to make an impact on the world. But
Mhm,
when it boils down to it, the world is so big and the people around you really are your world. And
mhm.
so by making a difference in the lives for the better for those people around you, I think that there's some really special things that can come out of that.
Absolutely, and especially with a family business, I mean, this is such a big part of your identity and such a big part of your community that why wouldn't you wanna prioritize those people and, their successes as well as your own.
Absolutely. And the butterfly effect is there. One small little thing can lead to more and more things that we never have any idea about.
That's so true.
Well, I wish you success, Molly, wherever life takes you. And thank you again so much for coming and sharing your story and your career and a bit about your company with me.
Thank you, Katie. It was nice to chat with you.
Fabulous. Well, you can find us back here next week with another interview. We're out weekly on Wednesdays. And in the meantime, share this on Instagram with your friends, leave a review, and you can find us online at the 100 Jobs Project. Thank you so much. Bye.